We're on the journey of Teshuvah. The journey of Teshuvah is a long journey, but we're getting closer and closer to the end of it. Practically, sometimes it's a lifetime work. Something that we don't start and begin in a few weeks, but it's a movement of Teshuvah, as we know. But before Elul, before the Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Judgment, we have this opportunity, this 1 month, that guides us in the ways of Teshuvah, returning to Hashem. So today we're going to speak about an interesting concept, which is called Teshuvah Ilah, the higher level of Teshuvah that is done with happiness. This is an original way of looking at the whole concept of returning to Hashem. Usually when we return to Hashem and we want Him to forgive us for certain things that we did in the past, so our approach would be to do it in a way of sadness, to cry, to regret solemnly what we've done in the past. And that seems to be that you've got to do it in a way that you really regret it, in a sad way, that you are upset about what you did previously and you're never going to do it again. Here we're going to learn about a new approach, doing simcha in a happy way. Interestingly, the Rebbe always spoke about this method of doing Teshuvah.
Doing Teshuvah in a happy way.
In a happy way, exactly.
Not simcha in a happy way. You said simcha in a happy way.
Right. Teshuvah in a happy way. Sometimes simcha also has to be in a happy way. That's right. Teshuvah in a happy way. Returning to, how could that be? How does it work that we do Teshuvah in a happy way? What is the meaning of that? What kind of Teshuvah is that? How can that help the past? How can it change the past? So here we're going to learn about what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, and also about two big principles in Hasidut generally. Hasidut teaches us that there's a method in life that's called iskafia. What is iskafia? Iskafia in Aramaic means, translating that to Hebrew, would be lichpot, likfot. How would we translate it in English? To force, to train in a certain way. What does that mean? Our mission in the world should be a lot related to training and forcing ourselves to do things in the right way. That is called iskafia. When I don't want to do something, but nevertheless I train myself to do it, that causes a lot of nachas to Hashem. Nachas. Hashem enjoys our struggle. It's a struggle, and without that struggle things would be so easy. We would be like angels. Hashem doesn't enjoy angels so much. Although they are pure, special, and of course He does enjoy them. But there's something that that we have an advantage, let's call it that way, we have an advantage here. What is that? The struggle. Angels, the highest level that they could approach, it's their nature. They were programmed to do it in that way. So therefore, it's not such an advantage. There's no chidush. There's nothing here new when they go according to the way Hashem tells them to. But however, when humans that have a certain challenge, when they decide to go in Hashem's way, they basically they're forcing themselves, they're training themselves to become better people, to become closer to Hashem, and this causes Hashem a lot of nachas. That is a certain method that Tanya speaks about. Then there is, thank you very much. Then there is a second method that also Hasidus speaks about, and that method is called ishapcha. What is ishapcha? It comes from the word, what would it remind you of? Hafuch, turning around. Ishapcha is to change things totally. Change things totally means to, you don't face a challenge anymore. You don't face the challenge because it becomes nature. King David, for example. King David, the Torah tells us that King David had no Yetzer Hara. He had no source that was pulling him to do the wrong thing. How was that? He's a human being. He was able to turn things around. He was able to do what we would call ishapcha. He turned things around. He has no challenge anymore. He woke up at night when he heard the, what's the instrument called?
The harp.
The
harp.
The harp, exactly. The harp. That is something that only if you have a freedom of your Yetzer Tov, of your godly soul, you would be able to wake up in such a natural way, to sing to Hashem. That is who David became. He didn't start off in that way.
But he did sin.
So this is an interesting question, and it's a whole different shiur. How do we approach sins of tzaddikim? The simple answer is that he did not sin, but what happened there was what we would interpret in a way of a sin, but for him it wasn't considered a sin, because tzaddikim have no ability to sin. But it's a difficult concept, and I understand the question, because literally it seems like a sin.
The Kohen at that time told him that he sinned.
Yeah.
Compared to his level, we could call it a sin. He was expected to do something better than what he did. But it isn't a sin. Let's take it at that approach that we accept that the kings in those times, the prophets in those times, and the biggest tzaddikim and leaders of the generation aren't just random people. They are special people that are connected to Hashem. So for them, sinning in a regular meaning of doing a sin is impossible. We can take it at this point as a matter of belief, because that's the foundation of Am Yisrael, to be able to create a nation that will go on from generation to generation. If King David did sin, so we might have a disagreement with him. We might say, well, who is King David, chas v'shalom, to tell us to do this and this and that? He himself, he sinned. So it's very important that when we approach the whole connection of ourselves to previous generations, our approach has got to be fully respect to them and understanding that they didn't sin. The Torah tells us, it might be that the prophet even mentions that it's a sin compared to his level. Noach, for example, says Noach, he was a perfect person. Noach, tzaddik tamim haya b'doraisa. He was a complete, pure tzaddik in his generation.
But
if you would place him in Abraham's generation,
he was nothing.
He was, I can't say nothing, but he was definitely not on the level of Abraham. Why? What is the difference? They both listen to Hashem. It says Noach did not pray for his generation. Hashem told him, build the ark because I'm going to destroy the entire universe and only you and your family and each and every species of the creatures are going to be saved. Noach said, perfect. I'm going to go build the ark.
But he didn't.
And then when they came and told him, Noach, why are you building an ark? Are you planning on some kind of cruise? Noach said, no, Hashem is going to bring a mabul. He didn't try and, maybe he hinted to them that if things will stay in the same way, there'll be a mabul. There'll be this flood. But he didn't try and bring them closer to Hashem. He didn't try and return them to Hashem. Abraham. What did he do when he heard something about a different city, miles away from where he was? We're not even talking about the entire universe.
He tried to convince Hashem not to destroy that city.
Very good. What city was that? Sodom. Exactly. We see the care that Avraham had towards other people. And that's why if we would compare Noach and Avraham and put them in the same generation, Noach wouldn't be on the same level as Avraham. Because Avraham cared for others and Noach did not. So, but we cannot disrespect Noach. We cannot say that he sinned because he did not ask for, because in that generation, in that time, he did what was good.
Can we go back to David? And when did he make Teshuvah? Before or after he took Bathsheba and had Uriah killed? When did he become so pure? Because that was pretty bad.
Right. So it's a difficult subject, a difficult answer. I can't say that I have a clear answer on that.
He wasn't
Once
the only-
again,
that wasn't the only
King
one.
David.
That's the sin.
That was a sin, right?
Yeah.
So we come out of a point that King David, the moment that he was a king, when he was chosen by Hashem, he's already. So you know what? I've got to come back to you on this subject. I don't want to just say and then maybe it's right and wrong. Bezrat Hashem, in one of the shiurim, we'll do a whole shiur about Teshuvah of tzaddikim, where tzaddikim hold. And there's also another concept that is that when people fail, these are very hard and difficult concepts, because we know on the one hand, we solemnly believe that the tzaddikim of the generations are pure, complete and pure, and therefore they did not sin. What we seem to see as a sin, we've got to try and explain what does that mean, what was the problem there, or how to approach it, but it cannot be a reason to say that this tzaddik isn't good, because the moment we say that David HaMelech sinned, oh, therefore I won't receive from him, I won't respect him in the same way, so therefore we lose the respect to previous generations, and we wouldn't be here. If we would question David HaMelech, we would not be sitting here learning Torah, reading his Tehillim. We would have a strong question of how could that be?
He wasn't the only king that sinned, you know.
One of the things we have to look at is the sin of falling short of what we've been told that we need to do is put in balance with the Teshuvah, because the moment that the prophet spoke to David about it, David understood and made Teshuvah. Right there on the spot.
Right.
And then the mercy of Hashem then comes into play.
Right, 100%. So there is a process that even a tzaddik does teshuvah. Even a tzaddik returns to a higher level. But I think we need to give a full shiur explaining it. Because even tzaddikim, returning to Hashem isn't necessarily on a sin, as we spoke previously, that returning to Hashem, everyone can return to Hashem. It's not only on a sin. So, I didn't prepare for this specific topic. So and I don't want to just throw out what I think or that. But one thing I can tell you, that we have to come from a certain approach where we fully believe and fully trust the previous tzaddikim, the previous generations, because if not that, then we cannot be here. How to explain? So that's the example with Noach and with Avraham, that there are certain ways to explain what might seem to be a sin. By King David, we've got to try and explain what happened there exactly. And yes, of course, it wasn't to his level, and that's why he needed to do teshuvah. That's why the prophet told him, you've got to return to Hashem, because it's not to your level. But this isn't a literal sin that we would say, well, David HaMelech lacks something, and therefore we wouldn't take things from him like King David. Yes.
You have to realize, I think, that what was the result of David's sin?
What was the result?
Shlomo HaMelech.
Shlomo HaMelech. A good point. That's a very good point.
And the temple.
And the temple, because King David, it says very interestingly that King David couldn't build a temple. Hashem told King David, you will be the architect. You plan it, but don't build it. Who is going to build it? King Solomon. Because the temple is a place of peace. And although you went to war on my command, and all the killing that you did was for the right reason, for a good cause. But you have
The
what we call...
temple, he said the temple is for all people, and all those people that you were warring against, they're not going to feel that this...
The point is more the idea of peace.
Peace.
That it's a temple of peace. So it is also for all the people, but we aren't so afraid to reject them because that isn't the purpose of the temple. The purpose of the temple is a bayis shel shalom, a house of peace. And someone that went to war cannot build the house of peace. And that's why King Solomon was the one to do it.
The Moshiach is going to have to be a military leader. He's going to have to wage war and build the third temple, or it will be built.
Good question.
That kings, they're by their role, whatever they do. If I do this, 10,000 people die. If I don't do it, 100,000 people die.
Right.
So how can a king be pure in the sense that David wasn't
Right.
pure?
So it's a very good question. By the way, there's two Mashiach. There's Mashiach ben Yosef, and there's Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef, he's the one to fight the war. He's the one that comes before Mashiach ben David, and he is the one that's going to do all the fighting in the war. It says about Mashiach that, and this is from the Maimonides, because no other halachic person speaks about. Halacha means practice. What do we do? We have the Tanakh, we have the Mishnah, we have the Talmud. These are all, sometimes they could be two opinions. But how do we actually practice? That comes from the books of halakha, such as the Shulchan Aruch, such as the Maimonides, for example. And he is the only one that speaks about the times of Mashiach. He does mention that the Yelachem Milchamot Hashem, the Mashiach will fight the wars of Hashem. It doesn't say if there will literally be wars that involve violence. Sometimes wars can be, and this is one of the things that the Rebbe says, that, for example, there's another thing that Mashiach will do. Mashiach will do, he will vayachov, we spoke about iskafia, about controlling, about training. So he'll train vayachov kol Yisrael, all of Am Yisrael, to return to the ways of Hashem. What does that mean that he'll vayachov? Does that mean that he'll take everyone and force them to go back to the ways of Hashem? The movement of Teshuvah can explain to us a bit about this idea of returning, bringing people back and training them to go in the ways of Hashem. It's not literally that he'll take every Jew and he'll force him to go and do Hashem's commands. It's more a movement that he'll bring to the world. And that is also when we talk about Yilachem Milchamot Hashem, it also means that the war doesn't have to be with a sword. There could be, the war, the idea is that it would force people to go in a certain way. He'll achieve that goal. And if he achieves it in a different way, that's also good. That is the way that the Rebbe explains that meaning of the wars. Why is that? Because the Rebbe always said that our generation is worthy of the coming of Mashiach. And there's no need for more. Everyone talks about the war of Gog and Magog, the famous war. And that's like the worst wars of all. So many people are going to die. And the Rebbe, it's very interesting, but the Rebbe said that war was in the past. We suffered enough throughout the generations to say that war that involves a lot of violence happened previously. We have 2 world wars that we could say that relate to that war. And that is all because the Rebbe truly cares about the people, about first of all Am Yisrael, but not only Am Yisrael, about the entire universe. And that is where we are moving towards the times of Mashiach. We're not that yet there, but we are moving towards that. And there's one thing that the Rambam says, the Maimonides says, that has to be a title for whenever we talk about the times of Mashiach and about what's going to happen. The Maimonides says that the rule is that we do not know what is going to happen until it actually happens. There are so many midrashim, so many commentators that talk about the idea of the coming of Mashiach, what's going to happen, this miracle, this war, that war. We've got to know that predicting it, standing here and trying to predict what exactly is going to happen isn't the way. It isn't the way, and that brought a lot of false Mashiachs, by the way. The idea of people saying, well, I know that this and this is going to happen. Turned out that it didn't happen. What did it cause? For example, Shabtai Tzvi. He's probably the most famous Mashiach Sheker that was in Am Yisrael. And it's not a story of 1,000 years ago. This is a story of 500 years ago. 500 years ago. He brought the Jews to actually believe that he is going to be the Savior, that he's going to rescue Am Yisrael. When he failed, he caused a lot of other Jewish people to convert, to become Muslims. And that's why we've got to be very, very careful about predicting things and in such a way that we don't really know what exactly is going to happen. So once again, we've got the Maimonides, who explains to us what the halacha is, how to know when Mashiach is here, how to identify who is Mashiach. He's got to be a leader. He's got to be a Torah scholar. He's got to be doing all the mitzvot. He's got to be a wise person. And then when we know that when he brings all of Am Yisrael, the Kabetz Nidcha Yisrael, he returns Am Yisrael to Israel. That is one of the things also. Now, once again, it doesn't mean that Mashiach is going to come to every person and bring him onto a plane, and it could be a certain movement that causes the people to return back to Israel. And it's related to him, it's related to the time. And once again, the point is that we've got to wait for it to happen. We've got to wait for it to happen. There's actually a mitzvah to wait for it to happen. Not only to say, well, like the story of the by the way, here this relates to that story, that the people were so broken after the story of Shabtai Tzvi that they did not want to hear about new movements, and the Hasidic movement started 250 years ago, or maybe even 300 years ago, small pockets of people that were already more and more connected to the ideas of Hasidus. People were very scared of this new movement. They did not know what it is, what's it about. There's the Misnagdim. We talk about the Misnagdim, right? The people that were against the movement of Hasidus. Today that doesn't exist. Today no one says that the movement of Hasidus is bad. Then they did not know what Hasidus is all about. They did not know what these people are davening too much. They're praying too much. Why are they praying so long? Why are they saying Tehillim all day? That wasn't something so common. Torah scholars used to study Torah for most of the day, but they didn't pray. They prayed for 45 minutes in the morning like we do. So this brought a certain fear from the whole concept of Mashiach. And this is a story about a Jew coming home one day after the Shabbos drasha of the rabbi. He comes back home and he tells his wife, "You won't believe, Mashiach is going to come soon." That is what the rabbi just told us. In those days, there was what we call the wandering rabbis. They used to go around towns, around small villages, and they used to give a drasha once every 3 months, because they didn't have enough rabbis for all these small towns, small villages. So this person comes home and he says, well, there was this rabbi that came from the city and he's on his tour and he told us that Mashiach is going to come. Mashiach, what is Mashiach? Mashiach will rescue us. What do we need to rescue? What is Mashiach going to do? Well, you know, the Cossacks, they come by once a year and they take our sheep, they take our houses, they take our money. Mashiach is going to get rid of them. Why? Because he's going to take us to Eretz Israel. No problems, no Cossacks anymore. We'll be in Eretz Israel. So the wife returns to the husband and she tells him, well, just tell Mashiach to take the Cossacks to Eretz Israel and leave us here.
Oh.
So this is just to show that there's something very important to wait for Mashiach and not to take it at it as if, why do we need Mashiach? Let's stay here. Let's just make sure Mashiach will take all the things around. No. Mashiach is here in order for us to be able to serve Hashem better, give us the possibility to do a lot of mitzvot that we can't do today. We can't do today, or because we don't have the time, we don't have the power, we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. So this is a bit about the topic of Mashiach. But Bezrat Hashem, let's get back to Igeras Teshuvah, and we will have a shir about a deeper shir about Baalei Teshuvah, because it's not only about the interpretation, how do we understand the sins of tzaddikim, it's also explaining, for example, there's another explanation. Avraham did not listen to Hashem. He disobeyed what Hashem told him. Hashem told him, don't go down to Egypt. Hashem did not want him there in Egypt. Vayered Mitzrayim, the explanation is that this was a Yerida. He went down. When he went to Egypt, it was going down in the levels of Kedusha. Because we know we're not allowed to leave Eretz Israel. We're not allowed to leave. 3 reasons. To earn Parnasa, to study Torah, or to marry. But otherwise, we're not allowed to leave Israel. So, also there's a whole explanation, a deep explanation to the concept of sins, and how sins in a retroactive way of looking at it actually is a benefit to Hashem. These are scary words. You are in a certain way legitimizing sins. You're saying that Hashem at the end of the day benefits from them. There's an explanation to explain how does that work and what exactly it is, but this is a very deep concept. This is a deep concept, and we can have a shir about it, Bezrat Hashem, a specific time. We'll get the message out so everyone knows.
We have to wait.
Yeah, it's a lot of preparation to do it in a... Okay, so we were talking about Teshuvah. And
Now you mentioned the happiness to make Teshuvah. Let's speak about that. What you say, we should cry, we should whatever, put ash on the head and all that. What they do this for, they say, Chatat, and they are singing, and how you can sing and say, comedian, we are singing. This is the beginning, the first time I hear that, and I understand what's going on. What's going on?
100%. It's a very good point, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. There is there's a story about a village in that time. There was the Hasidim, then there was the Misnagdim. And the Hasidim, they wanted their person to be the shochet, which is he should do the shchita. What would be the translation of a shochet?
The
slaughter.
A slaughter.
Okay. A butcher, basically. So he would prepare the meat to be kosher, and the Hasidim wanted the shochet of that village, a small village, not too many people. And the Misnagdim, they wanted their person to be the shaychet. Once again, the butcher, we've got to rely on him because he is the one that provides us with kosher meat. And kosher food is something very important. It becomes part of us. We want to know that what we're eating is healthy also physically, right? People don't want to eat poison or something that's infected. They also don't want to eat something that's spiritually infected. So they said, we're going to bring them for a debate, basically, to see who is a higher scholar, who is a greater scholar. Now, it's important to understand the whole movement of Hasidus works on behaving in a way of bitul. Bitul means a modest way, being humble, not expressing your abilities, not bragging about what you know and what you learned, but being humble. And that's what we know until this day. The movement of Hasidus, to a point where in Russia, in communist Russia, they used to say from 8 in the evening until 6 in the morning, no one can leave the house. One Chassid was at a Fabregen, he was at a Hitvadut, a gathering where they said L'chaim, and they spoke about serving Hashem, Hasidic stories, they wished each other health, and he left the Fabregen, he left there, it was 8:15, and 8:15, and then the police on the road says, well, who is it there? So this Chassid was after Hasidic Fabregen, that they spoke about Bitul, about being humble. So he says, Bitul is walking here. A humble person is walking here. And so the police officer says, what? So the Chassid thinks again to himself, well, if I'm saying that I'm humble, that's already not being humble. So he tells the police officer, you know what, even Bitul isn't walking here. Even a humble person isn't walking here. No, that's a story, it's a Hasidic story. So back to the story about the shaychet, about this the slaughterer, that he basically so the Chassid started to show off all of his knowledge, all of his studies that he learned, and they said, wow, this is a huge Talmid Chacham. We want him in, no problem. We're going to take this person to be the shaychet. And the shaychet comes back to the base MIDRASH, to the shul, and his friends tell him, you've got to pay for becoming such bragging so much about your abilities, about your studies. This isn't the way that we were learnt to do. And then they were the part of the hitvadut, part of the gathering and sitting together and saying L'chaim, brought a certain level of closeness between one another that enabled people to express themselves openly. So that's part of the movement of Hasidus, is that we can approach each other and say, we've got to work harder to get closer to Hashem. Or why didn't you do this? And people took it easily, first of all, because of the L'chaim, which gives a nice environment, but also because that's the whole movement. So they told him, how are you bragging about your knowledge, about being such a Talmid Chacham? So this is a very important concept, and this will teach us a bit about Teshuvah Ilah, Teshuvah with happiness. And he said, you know what? Because the Rebbe, which was the Tzemach Tzedek in those times, the third Rebbe of Chabad, said that to become a shaychet, you have to have mesirus nefesh, you have to be prepared to give up yourself. What does that mean? How did he give himself up? How did he give anything up? He just expressed himself. He just showed how great he is and how wise he is and how learned he is. Sometimes mesirus nefesh isn't someone that dies on Kiddush Hashem. It isn't someone that sacrifices his life. Sometimes mesirus nefesh means just doing what's right for Hashem's sake. Mesiras Nefesh is something wide. It's something that has all kinds of shapes, all kinds of ways, all kinds of methods. It depends on what we're talking about. If someone approaches you and says, bow down to this idol or I kill you, Mesiras Nefesh would be not bowing down. If someone says, well, you want to become a sheikhet, but we don't know if you learn it enough. There, Mesiras Nefesh means showing how learned you are. Why? Because it's all for Hashem's sake. The person that dies al kiddush Hashem because he doesn't want to worship idols, what is he basically saying? Hashem is the most important thing. He is in front of me. I do things for him. The sheikhet that shows off his knowledge, why is he doing that? He's showing once again that he cares for Hashem. Hashem is in front of me, and therefore I'll do things that I don't believe in, that I don't feel comfortable with, but for the sake that people should eat kosher meat, perfect kosher meat, the best meat possible. You would say that, wait a second, you're working your entire life on becoming humble. How can you basically now show off all of your knowledge? That's Mesiras Nefesh. That's giving up your will. You are prepared to give up. Imagine someone that has a project of his life. He's been working on something for a long time. He's prepared to give that up. This is that person. He's doing Mesiras Nefesh. He's giving up his project that he worked on becoming humble. He's giving that up. That is a story. It's a deep message to us. Because in our generation, sometimes, same way as we feel that Teshuvah means suffering, Teshuvah means fasting, Teshuvah means doing all kinds of uncomfortable things, sometimes we think that serving Hashem has to involve uncomfort, has to involve doing things that we aren't used to. Not always. Not always. Sometimes living al kiddush Hashem is the way to do it. That is the idea that we know. What does this have to do with Teshuvah and Teshuvah mitoch simcha? So there are two ways, two approaches to look at the idea of Teshuvah. Let's take it in the most literal way possible. Teshuvah means that we've got to clean up the room. We've got to clean up the room. There's mess in the room. We've got to clean it up. Option A is, and that's what we learned until now, that we are we're gonna basically clean the room. We've got to put on gloves. We've got to deal with the dirt. That is one level of doing Teshuvah. We learned about it, that it means leaving the sin, saying, I'm never going to deal with the sin again. I'm never going to do this sin, and getting closer and closer to Hashem. We spoke about a few ways. If I'm not mistaken, offerings that they used to bring in that time, fasts that the Tanaim used to do, and a lot of other big rabbis. Today we don't need to fast anymore. That's another way that we do it, through giving charity. Because we're giving something of ourselves. That is the way to get closer and closer to Hashem. Now, that is level A. That is cleaning the room. But there's level B. There's building a new room. Building a new room means that, for example, something that sometimes can drive people to return to Hashem. How does that happen? I always wondered to myself, I asked my parents and I asked other people, what happened? Why did you decide to become Baalei Teshuvah? Why? What happened in the middle of the life? You were the age of 20, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50, everyone in his timeline. So sometimes, there are many reasons. This isn't the only reason. But sometimes it's the feeling of thirst. what's called in the Lashon of Hasidut, Tzam'a lecha nafshi. The words of King David, my soul is thirsty for you, Hashem. I need you in my life. Nothing can quench my sense of, quench is the right word, right? Of my feeling of thirst. Only you, Hashem. And this is a whole new approach where we're not talking about our house, cleaning our old house. We are rebuilding a new house for His sake. We are trying to connect to Him. He's the one that's important here. There are two ways to look at things, and this is a higher level because we'll speak about it in a moment, but, excuse me, there's two ways to look at things. We can look about our home and we can look about His home. If we look about our home sometimes might be dirty. We need to clean it. But if you're looking about His home, sometimes we might want to build for Him a new home. And that is our approach that we would have to the whole concept of Teshuvah. He's the one that's important. I'm driven to Him. I feel in my life that He is missing. It's not only about sometimes the dirt that I left at home. That's not always the approach. It's more about I need Him in my life. Two different ways. One involves sadness and one involves happiness. Imagine what the Alter Rebbe says this. It's amazing. Not here in Geras Teshuvah, but the Alter Rebbe speaks about it in Tanya. And he says, imagine a king. He gives a metaphor to the whole idea of Matan Torah, giving the Torah. And he says like this, it's amazing. Imagine a king that meets someone very simple, that has no family, no friends, no special family tree or background. And the king says, you know what, I want you to come and join me in my palace. And he takes him onto his horse, and they go towards the king's city, and he gives him whatever he needs, the best clothes, the best jewelry, whatever he needs, the best food, and he lets him spend time, not only spend time, but live in the same house of the king. This is the metaphor that the Alter Rebbe brings to explain to us what Hashem did in Matan Torah. We were slaves in Egypt. Hashem could have chosen the Egyptians. He could have chosen anyone else but Am Yisrael. Nevertheless, He brings us and He gives us His wisdom, His Torah, the best jewel that exists. And He wants us to keep the connection with Him by doing the mitzvot, by studying the Torah. So once again, this is another form, another way of returning to Hashem. Understanding how the entire approach is about Him and not always about us. Not always about us in the way that we aren't dealing always with the past, but we are here to build a new place for Hashem. It says that the name of Hashem is Yud, Hey, and then there's a Vav, and then there's another Hey. There are two Heys. I know that Chanoch likes the Hey. So he's not here, but we'll... Teshuvah. What does Teshuvah mean? Tashuv, Hey. If you take the words Teshuvah, Taf, Shin, Vav, Bet, Hey, we've got the first four letters is Tashuv. Fifth letter is Hey. What is Tashuv? Return. Return what? Return the Hey. Tashuv, Hey. That is the idea of Teshuvah. That's the idea of Teshuvah, and that is what we are doing. Now there are two Heys. right? Hashem's name, Yud and a Hey, a Vav and a Hey, 2 Heys we've got there. We've got the Hey in the middle and the Hey at the end. We've got 2 Heys to return. We've got the first Hey is doing the basic level of Teshuvah. Then there's the second Hey, which is basically returning in a higher level, in a higher way. And that can be done through simcha, through happiness. Why? We said, well, what is it about? Or the question that you asked previously, how could it be that when we say Osham Bagad, we sing, we're coming close to it in a month's time, we're singing Osham. How could that be? The idea of connecting to Hashem, that we want Hashem in our lives, involves a lot of happiness. Involves a lot of happiness, and the fact that it involves happiness gives us a whole new way to return to Hashem. It doesn't always have to be in a way where we cry about the past. We could focus on what's really important. What is important? Connecting to Hashem. He is the one that's important, not always us. And for that, we can do it in a happy way, in a happy method. This connects to the 2 things that we spoke about at the beginning, iskafia and ishapcha, right? Iskafia means forcing ourselves to do something right. Ishapcha means turning the thing over. There's no force anymore. When I turn things over, I do it happily. The Rebbe spoke about doing Teshuvah ilah in our generation, the highest method of Teshuvah to do in our generation. In addition to that, the Rebbe said, in our generation, don't deal with forcing yourself to do what's good. Turn things around. How could that be? In our generation, in such a low generation, in such a generation where there's so many difficulties, so many obstacles on the way, how could we turn things around? These are methods that David HaMelech used, that the giants used. How could we turn things around? But the Rebbe says, yes, that is the way. Turn things around, do it in a happy way. So there are many ways. I've heard one explanation which is interesting. First of all, it's important to know that this is the approach. Instead of trying to force yourself and doing things in a hard way, your approach, and this is the way that they explain, should be different. If until now, for example, it was hard to wash hands early in the morning, and you had to struggle in order to do that, because the first thing that we've got to do when we wake up is to wash our hands from the impurity that's on them from the night. So what the idea is that if until now it was a struggle, and we said, well, let's move it away from the point where it's a struggle and make it part of the routine. Make it something that we do easily without getting into a whole combat and thinking, wow, this is something very special that we are doing. And then it's a fight. Should I do it? Should I not do it? This is just one example that rabbi that told me this explanation gave. So that's why I'm saying this explanation. And this example. This example could be in many things. If until now charity was something that's hard to do, or caring about someone else was something that was hard to do, or davening 3 times a day was something hard to do. So let's move it to a different lane. Let's move it to the lane where we say, well, this is part of my routine, instead of putting it on the lane of the struggle. And this is the idea again of Teshuvah ilah, of the higher way of looking at things. It's not about the combat that we have between ourselves, it's about the house that we want to build for Him. So this is the highest part of Yeras HaTeshuvah. And here,
the ultimate Teshuvah is to build the temple, which
right,
is a house for Hashem.
Exactly. The house for Him. That's the exact point. That is our mission throughout these years, the 2,000 years since the temple was destroyed. We are trying to build the temple. returning to Hashem.
Become worthy that it be built.
Exactly. Become worthy that will be. But our focus is on Him. So again, this could drive people towards doing Teshuvah. The feeling that we want Him in our lives. We need this light. We need Hashem present in our lives. It's not about that. I always feel, some people sometimes they would, I'm not saying that that's the wrong approach. Some people say, I've got to fix the past. I've got to fix the past that bothers me. In our generation, especially with as the generation goes on and with the youth today also, people don't always see the bad in the past, and they don't always care about it. We've got to inspire them with that there's something special that they could connect to. Something special, something new that has a great light, that we care for that. That is the highest method of Teshuvah. That is doing it with happiness, because we are living in the King's Palace, as the Alter Rebbe says. We're living in the King's Palace in the highest way possible, with whatever we need, whatever we want. And this is also the idea of Ishapcha, turning things around compared to forcing. Turning things around is a higher way. It's possible in our generation, maybe not on the same level as King David, but definitely in the way where we can turn things around. So this is basically to complete a bit about the Teshuvah. And Bezrat Hashem, I'll prepare a shir about the Teshuvah of the tzaddikim and the way we approach this whole idea, and to approach again the idea, the benefit that can come out of sins, because we know that we're here to elevate things in the world. So one way of elevating things is in a positive way, like a positive mitzvot. When we take an apple and make a blessing, we elevate it. How do we elevate things that we aren't allowed to eat?
Avoid them.
Sorry?
Avoid them.
Avoid them. What were you about to say?
Getting a permission.
Getting a permission. But let's say a case where there is no permission. You know that you can't eat something that wasn't shefted according to.
That's
Avoiding them. Avoiding them, that is the way that we understand until this point. Avoiding them is the first way of doing things. But still, where's the positive way to elevate them? Avoiding them says, you know what, I'm not going to touch it, and that's the way that it returns to Hashem. But Baalei Teshuvah, and this is where it becomes complicated, people that unfortunately the circumstances have brought them to that point where they did benefit from that thing, when they return to Hashem, they bring that with them. So no one would tell you you can eat something not kosher. But if it happened that a person ate something that's not kosher, when he returns to Hashem, he elevates that unkosher thing as well. That's the key point, but it's lo pashut, and Bezrat Hashem a different shir to explain that whole idea.